Coming up, all of a sudden, everybody wants to give Nick Saban advice about the Alabama quarterback situation, and Les Miles apparently has a real problem with Ed Orgeron. Wait till you hear this. It's coming up, and it's all on the way next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello everyone and welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. Glad to have you with us. SEC Talk coming up, and this is actually going to be a pretty fun show. We got a lot of different people weighing in on a number of topics. A lot of Alabama QB stuff here off the top. This Les Miles stuff in a minute. It's a little different audio than I typically would play for you. I left it long. I let it kind of hang out there. At one point in time, I think Les Miles even uses an expletive, which is sort of weird. This is some pretty juicy stuff here.
No, I can't wait because I took the Brandon Adams approach to this. You know, I'm going to read between the lines on what we're hearing on Les Miles. So I think that's going to be a fun topic.
So we'll do that coming up in a moment. Let me do item number one here off the top, though, on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. I think it's safe to say that the biggest decision facing any SEC coach this offseason in terms of what happens in the 2018 season is how Nick Saban handles his quarterback situation, because it's a little different than the Georgia thing where, you know, Jake Fromm, we saw him last year. We assume Justin Fields is good yet. We haven't seen him yet, though. One of the things that makes the Alabama quarterback situation so juicy is the fact that we saw Jalen Hurts for 2 years, and he was pretty good. He was, getting it done to the tune of college football playoff appearances. And then Tua Tagovailoa steps in his stead, wins a national championship, and now what does Saban do with these two guys? And does the loser of this quarterback competition transfer? This is as sexy an offseason storyline as you can possibly have, and people are starting to kind of weigh in on this, including Bobby Bowden, local TV affiliate, catches up with the former Florida State coach, Bobby Bowden. He's there in the Yellowhammer state of Alabama. A Birmingham TV station catches up with him and says, hey, what would you do if you were coaching and it was Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa? And Bobby Bowden, in his very Bobby Bowden-esque way, gives his advice to Nick Saban in terms of how he would handle this quarterback situation. Take a listen to this.
Which quarterback is going to start? What a great problem. One of them's won about 20 games. The other one's won one. They can't go wrong on it. If I got a guy that won 20 ball games, and I got another that coached one, I'm going to go with that 20. I'm going to play the odds.
That's from WIAT, Channel 42, the CBS affiliate there in Birmingham. And let me start with Bobby Bowden here before we hear somebody else. I'm reckoning here it's not that big of a surprise to you that the old school coach, Bobby Bowden, and Bowden is as classically old school as you can get when it comes to being a college football coach. The old school coach here says, I'm going to go proven track record of 2 years over the guy that I only saw a half of. And let's be honest, the second half of the national championship game comes on late. Bobby Bowden didn't see that to begin with. He's already tucked away in bed. He's never seen Tua Tagovailoa. Couldn't pick him up out of a lineup. But back in the 80s, you played 2-year starters over guys who only played brief windows of football. That's what this is about, right?
I think so. And this, I agree with you. I think this is like a Bobby Bowden reading footnotes. Jalen's 26-2. Tua comes in and wins the national title. I don't know that Bobby Bowden's really looked in depth to what either one of these guys are players. And listen, there's nobody that has more respect for Bobby Bowden than me. I've told you before, I grew up a Florida State fan. I'm from the Florida Panhandle. All of that. I mean, I love Bobby Bowden. I get a chance to meet Bobby Bowden. I got tongue-tied when I talked to him. But this is so skin deep. You know what I mean? Like, this is so skin deep. This is not, boy, this guy brings this to the table. It's 26-2 as a starter, but let's look a little bit deeper into what Jalen said.
Okay, so let's you and I look a little deeper here, not just at what Bobby Bowden says, because while his sort of final takeaway is, I'd start the guy who's been the starter for a couple years over the latest hit, the newcomer to the discussion, Tua Tagovailoa. But Bobby Bowden actually starts off here by saying, you know what? It wouldn't really matter which of these two guys you started. They're both Alabama caliber quarterbacks. It wouldn't really matter who you started. Now, I want you to compare that for a moment. Guy who coached in the 80s and into the 90s, but sort of a legendary coach from a bygone era. Compare that to a guy like, say, O.J. Howard, who caught passes from Jalen Hurts and has played in sort of the contemporary modern version of Alabama. I want you to listen to how the answer from O.J. Howard is both similar and different. Touchdown Alabama magazine caught up with O.J. Howard to discuss the quarterback situation. And in one respect, Howard, just like Bobby Bowden, talks for a while before he finally arrives at his answer. But ultimately what O.J. Howard says here, the more contemporary figure, a little bit different than the classic old school coach. Let me let you hear O.J. Howard, then we'll compare.
Man, I think it's going to be like a dual quarterback type of thing. I think they're going to split a little bit of time, certain packages for each quarterback, and then go with the hot hand at the end of the game. I think that's at least for the first couple games. But I think you have to go with a true starter. Just for the field of the receivers. I think it's hard for you to keep interchanging quarterbacks because nobody can get adjusted to the game.
So this is one of those things that he wasn't prepared to answer, and much like Bobby Bowden, he's having to sort of talk himself into what his real answer is. Right. And at first, it's like, listen, you can play either one of these guys. But then thinking about a guy who caught passes, and from Alabama fans' standpoint, not enough passes, at least until you got to the national championship game, seemingly. O.J. Howard finally arrives on, you know what? It does matter who you pick. And I've said it doesn't matter, but I'm just a fat guy sitting here in this studio. O.J. Howard, who catches these touchdown passes and catches these throws, says, for the field of the receivers, you got to pick one guy. Right. You can't just toggle back and forth between the two because you're blowing these opponents out. If you want to get the most out of Jerry Jeudy, if you want to get the most out of Henry Ruggs and Devontae Smith and Robert Foster, those guys, actually I guess Foster's gone. But anyway, the guys who are still there, if you want to get the most out of them, right, you got to have a quarterback, you got to pick a guy, you're going to deliver the football to them. I mean, is O.J. Howard's viewpoint here a little more lines of your thinking? I mean, how would you compare and contrast what the old school Bowden and the new school O.J. Howard kind of have to say about that?
O.J. Howard definitely fits more along my lines of thinking. And I put more credence into what O.J. Howard's saying because, listen, this is a guy who was underutilized as a tight end. When he was at Alabama, the question always was, in the regular season, where is O.J. Howard? Here's a guy who's a first-round draft pick talent at tight end, and we can't get the guy the ball throughout the year. So that goes to kind of the storyline about Jalen's progressions and about really being able to see the whole field and find the right player on offense. I got to give credit to Tyler Mann over in the YouTube comment section. He says, it's almost like Bobby Bowden's reading the back of the book, then trying to give the book report. It's like, I'm not really sure.
That's a good line, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm going to touch around it, but then I'm going to dive deep in. But
you wrote that on YouTube, so I didn't see it, but that's a good line.
I gave him credit on here too. I gave him credit. That's good stuff. And I think that what O.J. Howard is saying, and he kind of whips it back into shape. He does. He kind of beats around the bush, and it's almost like, I don't want to down my guy Jalen, because I played with him, but at the same time, Tua is really good. And he kind of rounds it to form and says, listen, we can probably expect to see both of these guys in the field. It's probably a split quarterback situation. So I definitely give a lot more, credence, like I said, to what O.J. Howard's saying.
Chris Black says, Alabama going to lose 3 games this year. Betcha MF eyebrows. What do you think MF stands for?
I don't want to know, and I don't want to bet my eyebrows either.
So that's actually a pretty sinister bet. Can you imagine making somebody shave their eyebrows?
God, that's twisted, man.
That feels like one of those fantasy football bets your boy Shalab on the other side of the glass would have made.
No, yeah, you have no expression anymore.
Murphy Billings says Tua's going to give Alabama whoa, y'all are hard on Alabama today. A 6-4 season. He's got them forfeiting 2. No experienced people. This is the SEC. I mean, how about that argument? We don't hear that argument as much anymore, that the experience Jalen Hurts has does matter. Now, I sort of laughed that off when Bobby Bowden made the case, but here are some fans saying, you know what? Less experience to Tagovailoa, there is an unknown risk there. What do you make of that?
It doesn't matter, though. That's been my thing all along, and I understand. And it's almost like the answer to what Bobby Bowden's saying. It's like, hey, this guy's 26-2 as a starter. Well, listen, Blake Sims didn't have any experience. They went to the college football playoff. Jacob Coker didn't have any experience. They went to, they won a national championship. Jalen Hurts didn't have any experience his first year. They went to the college football playoff, won the national championship game. So I understand it. I think experience is huge. Listen, I'm going to give a great deal of credit to anybody saying that. But I think when you're weighing between the two options, to me, it's a talent level thing because you're looking in the long run.
Tech God Lawrence on Facebook says, look what happened to Georgia. Sometimes the 20-game winner isn't the best choice. That's a reference to Jacob Eason. He says about Tua and Jalen, play them each 50% of the first few games and then go with the best stats. So if we think that O.J. Howard has a pretty good point about, hey, for the receivers, the guys catching these passes to have their best season, they got to know who they're going to be catching balls from. Can you take it to November? Can you give 50-50 looks? I'm asking you, can you give 50 to Jalen, 50 to Tua? Then when you go on the road at LSU, have your quarterback figured out. End of the season against Auburn, have your quarterback figured out. SEC championship against Georgia, have your quarterback figured out.
He penciled that one in there. He thought I was going to miss that. He penciled that one in there, boy. Oh, my goodness.
I wanted to see if y'all were listening.
Yeah,
but SEC championship means whomever. Can Can you wait until November to have your quarterback figured out?
I think you can, but I don't think Nick Saban will. You know what I mean? Like, I think you could if you wanted to. And listen, the topic was brought up, and I thought about talking about this on Roll Tide Daily today. Hey, listen, why don't you start Jalen Hurts until you have 4 games left, and then stick Tua in there and redshirt him? You know what I mean? Let him start the last 4 games of the year and then just redshirt him. And I don't even know if that.
But Tua's already told you what happened if you do that.
Exactly. So is Jalen, and so you can try to go down that path all you want to. I don't think Nick Saban will do that. I think that as the season continues to grow, and this is what my point was a minute ago when we were talking about what guy has more experience. By the time the meaningful, the really meaningful stretch of the season gets here, the experience isn't going to matter. It's going to be about facing off against LSU and Auburn and whoever else, down the stretch.
All right, let me hit a few YouTube comments because Tyler Mann says, I want to know why BA isn't on YouTube more with us. Surely he knows by now that the YouTube crowd is where the smart people
Oh,
is.
shots fired.
So that's Tyler Mann doing a double barrel shot, one at me and then one on the dunces on Facebook. Steve Weaver says, let's see, no experience and Jalen Hurts takes him to the title. Tua has tons of experience compared to Jalen's first year. That's actually a pretty good point what he says there, if I'm following it correctly. Tua Tagovailoa has more experience now than when Nick Saban first named Jalen Hurts the starter, which is actually a really good point.
It's a great point. And Tua, not only went through the entire, spring as an early enrollee, here's a guy who got a chance to be a backup quarterback. That's not something Jalen had the opportunity to do. Jalen didn't learn behind anybody else. I mean, Cooper Bateman and Blake Barnett and whatever else, he didn't have that time to learn. That's what Tua got to sit back there and kind of see things from that perspective.
And then one more procedural point here. Who is it that wrote this a minute ago about me not being able to read 2 feeds at once? So, Steve Weaver says I can't read 2 feeds at once. So you've kind of figured this out, right? You have the 2 browsers
I got the
up at
double
one
screen.
time.
I got both browsers up.
I've got to get Mike to show me how to do that. The truth is, if I saw 2 at once, I probably wouldn't be able to read them, though.
Right. Now, there's a lot going on. Trust me. That's why sometimes I can feel you looking at me, and I'm like, hang on, B.A., I'll talk to you in just a second. I got to look at some of these comments coming in.
Speaking of a lot going on, let me do item number 2 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. We'll take a bunch more comments on this Alabama quarterback situation before now and the season starts, but y'all got to hear this Les Miles stuff. So Josh Ennis is a sports radio host in Houston, Texas. Got a popular show out there. If you want some reference here, this is sort of an obscure reference. Do you remember back during Super Bowl week when 2 sports radio hosts almost got in a fight with each other? Josh Ennis was one of the guys that almost got in a fight. So that gives you an idea who we're talking about here. That has nothing to do with Les Miles. It's just a little point of reference for the interview. Ennis is interviewing Les Miles, and the subject of LSU this season comes up. And at some point in time, apparently Les Miles thinks that Ed Orgeron has asked for patience this year. Now, before we hear Les Miles, we talk about Orgeron LSU all the time. Has patience been a big theme from Ed Orgeron? Am I wrong about this?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe so, but it's not something
we
that
got a lot of LSU people watching. Maybe they can kind of fill us in on this, because the most confusing thing about Les Miles going off here is I haven't really heard Ed Orgeron asking for a lot of patience. I don't think that would work for LSU fans in really any season. Orgeron's second season after sort of a disappointing first at all. But nonetheless, Les Miles thinks he's heard Ed Orgeron asking for patience, and Les Miles thinks that's unbecoming of a SEC head coach. Now, this is fascinating audio, I'm going to tell you. This is longer than a clip than we normally play. It's also a lot less edited than most clips that we play. He said this on the radio. At one point in time, I think he may drop an expletive here. This is pretty weird stuff from Les Miles. I play it because of how fascinating it is and how much it seems to shine a light on what sounds like some bad blood from Les Miles towards the guy that replaced him at LSU, Ed Orgeron. Here is Les Miles from a Houston sports radio station. Take a listen to this.
I never accepted the feeling of, hey, you need to have patience. When you say that you need to have patience, aren't you really just saying to your team you're not good enough? Because I want you to know something. I never took the field with the Tigers where I didn't think I was absolutely going to kick somebody's tail and that we were the best team, period. I don't give a shit. It took me a time in the week to get myself in a position where I said, yeah, okay, we got it. We got the plan. The plan is in. We're ready to play. Yeah, that took some time, but I never asked for, hey, give me a break here. Hey, listen, the Tigers are good. Tigers got good players. Tigers can play. Hey, you know what? We didn't make any mistakes. You guys are going to play your butts off this Saturday, and you're going to kick the living hell out of the opponent, and that's just the way it is. This is our day. This is not their day. Are you kidding me? You are the Tigers. So I always felt differently than, certain people need to have a safety net. If you need a safety net, you need not coach for the Tigers, because the Tigers are your safety net.
Is this an example of a guy who's become unhinged, or is this a good point? I mean, it's certainly an emphatic point. Whatever Miles thinks he's saying it with gusto.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
It's very entertaining, which is what I've always said Les Miles is. It's very entertaining one way or another. I mean, this guy he's on edge. I mean, he is on edge. I thought the interesting thing when I was listening to it is I want to know how LSU fans react to this.
I'm curious about that, too.
Because to me, the reaction to Les Miles' comments about the patience under Ed Orgeron tells me a lot about the leash that Orgeron will have. Like, if you're on Les Miles' side, if most LSU fans are on Les Miles' side and they look at it and say, boy, he's right. This shouldn't be a patience thing. That tells me about the leash that Ed Orgeron is likely to have this year. And I think it's so fascinating to dive into these words because I agreed with a lot of what Les Miles said in his interview. It was like, hey, listen, he says it flat out. There was not a game that I went into that I thought we were going to get beat. There was not a time that we went on the field that I thought, boy, this one's going to be a tough one for us. He says, I always knew the Tigers were in a position to beat the other team. He said, sometimes during a game week, during a game plan, I was a little bit iffy about it, but by the end of the week, I knew that we were going to win the game. And I think that's so interesting to hear from him.
But the reason why I use the description unhinged to talk about what Les Miles says there is, it'd be one thing if there was audio somewhere of Ed Orgeron saying, hey, you got to give us patience. We're just building this thing at LSU. I don't think that Ed Orgeron's ever said that. I think what this brings to the forefront here is not just, or not feelings that LSU fans may have about Ed Orgeron, but feelings that Les Miles has about Ed Orgeron. This strikes me as kind of an older guy, bitter about the way that he was let go at LSU. Yeah. I don't know that there's a there in terms of the origin of whatever made Les Miles want to say this. I just think he's got an axe to grind with Ed Orgeron. He's sort of looking for an excuse and a reason to kind of get it done.
Boy, in the YouTube comment section too, all our LSU guys, it's on fire right now, and it's I can't believe Les Miles will talk about Orgeron like that. Orgeron's not the reason that Les Miles got fired. Shannon Burgess says I think his feelings are still hurt.
Yeah,
it's intriguing, and I what's crazy to me is I know that LSU fans still love Les Miles. I mean, there's still a lot of love for Les Miles down in Baton Rouge in the state of Louisiana, but this, to me, was towing the line for Les Miles. I mean, he was going out there to say, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen to you as LSU head coach if you don't change the way you're kind of outlooking on things. And it's not like Ed Orgeron was hired as a completely different guy. This is an interim coach from Les Miles' staff that was given the head coaching job. So there's so many different dynamics.
I like what Tyler Mann says, that Les Miles left LSU in a bad spot. The offense was completely stagnant. I have to believe Orgeron's asking for patience because we aren't getting a lot of commits in the last few weeks like other schools. Okay, so if you want to bring in the 2019 recruiting stuff and some of the misses in 2018, that's one thing. But I feel like we pay pretty close attention to this. I haven't heard a lot of examples of Ed Orgeron asking for patience. Maybe he's asked for it and I've missed it, but I haven't really heard that. But it's really the first part of what Tyler says there that I find to be so interesting. This notion that Les Miles left LSU in a bad spot. And really what he did, and somebody else asked a moment ago, why isn't Les Miles coaching right now? I think the reason why Les Miles is not coaching is because the end of his coaching tenure at LSU is sort of left without any reasonable explanation for what happened. Miles remained very stubborn about making changes and bringing in sort of a new approach to offense. Nick Saban did that with Lane Kiffin, but Les Miles sort of stuck with the Cam Cameron style and the power sweep stuff that they seem to do over and over again. Miles just sort of stuck with that. Now, when he got fired, apparently the word on the street is he told every job that he interviewed with that he was willing to completely change everything he'd done at LSU. Well, why are you so willing to make complete and total changes now when you were stubborn at LSU? It makes it seem like you're only saying this now because you want to get a job again. I think that Les Miles, the reason why he'll never coach again as a head coach, at least in terms of major college football, is because he can't explain what happened to him at the end of his LSU tenure. And a lot of what Ed Orgeron's been asked to do is correct the failure of Miles at the end. At the very end for Miles, by LSU standard, it was a failure.
No, and I agree. And listen, there's so many different ways, too, to arrive at a failure. Is there not? I mean, there's schematically ways to go wrong. There's recruiting ways to go wrong. There's game management ways to go wrong. There's a lot of ways to undo it. Les Miles, on his way out, checked a lot of those boxes. I mean, he was still recruiting at a high level, and that's what he was pointing to, but a lot of people in the Facebook comment section kind of agreeing with you. Ben Mullen says, I love Les, but he shot himself in the foot by not changing. He can talk all he wants, but it's his own doing. A lot of people saying, Ty Pham saying, love Les, but there's a reason why he can't get another job. And, I'm always going to think Les Miles, this is just my opinion. This is coming from me personally. I'm always going to think that Les Miles should have been able to keep his job at LSU. Should have had the right to choose when he was going to leave. He's one of the winningest coaches in history. I thought he was a good coach at LSU. This is him to me at a time when Ed Orgeron is seemingly headed towards the hot seat. This is Les Miles trying to see if he can throw his own dagger in the circle.
Let me read Cliff Nelson here. He says, Les was stubborn, didn't change the offense. Orgeron is completely overhauling both lines and changing the entire offensive philosophy, which echoes a lot of what's been said here. Let me make one more point on this, and then we'll move on. We're all assuming, I think, here that this is an axe to grind for Les Miles against Ed Orgeron. There's really no way to interpret those words from the Houston radio station. If that's the case, is it about a different philosophy, or is this just the almost the oldest story in the book of he feels that Ed Orgeron pushed him out?
I don't think he feels that way. I don't think he feels that way. I just think he looks at it and says, I can't believe y'all thought he was a better option than me. I think that's the way he feels. I think he looks at it and says, Joe Oliva, I can't believe that you fired me, who I won a national championship for you.
That's interesting.
And I can't believe you hired one of my assistants and thought that's the better option. Yeah. That's the way I look at the whole story.
That's interesting.
And it's what I was trying to allude to a minute ago. I've always been on Les Miles' side of a lot of this stuff, but to me, this is bad timing, and it's a bad look, and the way he's talking and the way he sounds, to me, makes it a little more understanding that they had to get rid of.
That's really interesting. By the way, in the Facebook comment section, some good conversation ongoing about Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. I love to see that back and forth between the viewers of this program. That's always a lot of fun. Mike and I are thrilled to be a part of that conversation with you guys every single day right here on SEC Country Live. For now, though, let's do item number 3 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So there was an interesting report from a Gridiron Now writer about some pretty big recruits being hosted by Tennessee, including a name that's very familiar on this show every single day with the connection to Alabama. Let me show you John Bryce here, who writes for GridironNow.com, who tweets out at the end of last week, so Tennessee football flat out doing work on the recruiting trail, had 6 to 8 quarterbacks. Now, when I first read this, I thought it said had a 6'8" quarterback. So that's tall. No, it's 6 to 8 quarterbacks on campus last weekend in a special invite-only setting. In addition to lineman camp and 7-on-7, now I'm told they expect to host Tua Tagovailoa through the weekend. So that's a pretty long time for an Alabama commit to be visiting another school, especially arguably one of Alabama's 2 biggest rivals here. Is this an example of Jeremy Pruitt finishing second for another player, or is there some realistic chance that Tua Tagovailoa could flip to Tennessee at some point?
I would never say it's 100% that he's going to Alabama, and especially not with Jeremy Pruitt being the one recruiting him, because I know Jeremy Pruitt. I've seen the guy recruit. He can pull miracles out. He really can. I mean, he can pull this off. I would be dumbfounded. I mean, this would be explosive to me if Jeremy Pruitt's able to flip Tally at some point. I think this would be the biggest indication yet of where Tennessee football is headed if Jeremy Pruitt can pull Tally. Because listen, and the Bama fans look at it and say, well, Paul Tyson's committed to Alabama too, so why not, if you're Tally, kind of go out there and. I've seen Paul Tyson. I've heard about Tua Tagovailoa. I've seen both of them's highlights. Talia is the guy here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Talia is the guy. That's the guy, Nick Saban. If Nick Saban had to pick one, in my opinion, he's picking Talia. And for that guy, for an Alabama commit, for whose family moved to the state of Alabama, moved outside of Birmingham for Tua, for him to head up to Knoxville for an official visit, I think that in and of itself is a big deal. Now, I don't think he's going to Tennessee, but it's a big deal that he headed up to Knoxville for a few days.
Stephen Early on Facebook says, why would Tua want to go to the school with his brother when all he hears is drama and questions about playing time? I guess my question about that would be is the drama, the question about playing time, is the visit to Tennessee or maybe other visits that Tua Tagovailoa may take, is this more of like what the folks on Twitter have said in the past of the whole Tagovailoa recruitment here is a manipulation tool to try to get the quarterback job for Tua over Jalen Hurts for the 2018 season. And Tua moving up his commitment earlier than he initially planned was some sort of leverage to say choose the Tagovailoa family over the Hurts family. And now with Tua taking visits other places as a way of reminding you, you know what, don't count this in the bag. Do right by the one Tagovailoa to make sure you get the other. Is this a potential manipulation effort on the part of the Tagovailoa family?
I don't see it that way, personally. I understand how somebody who's not an Alabama fan and doesn't look through it through those eyes would see that, though. I mean, Nick Saban came out last week. We covered it. Nick Saban said, listen, anything you're doing to put the highlight on yourself is not a good thing. And this is like almost like a branch off of that entire scenario and that entire story. I think this is Talia just doing due diligence. I think that, there was already a relationship with Jeremy Pruitt while he was at Alabama. This is Talia saying, hey, listen, what do I have to lose by going to Knoxville for one weekend during June and seeing what it's all about? That's what I want to see it as. That's what I want to feel like it is. Do I know for sure that's the case? I don't. This could be Talia's, trying to make a statement.
So if you're Jeremy Pruitt, put me in his head for a minute. You got Talia Tagovailoa on campus, and I'm probably butchering his first name. The truth is, I say it's slightly different every single time. But you got him on campus. His brother is likely the starting quarterback for Alabama. Are you a little tight-lipped about what you tell him? I mean, not that he's working as a double agent by even being there, but his brother's the Alabama quarterback. For all intents and purposes, he is the starter. And brothers talk. There's dinner table, there's all that kind of stuff. Are you resistant to tell everything to Talia that you might tell to another recruit, given the fact that, he's likely to tell Tua and to his parents everything that Jeremy Pruitt tells them?
I don't think so. And listen, Jeremy Pruitt's been around the block. Listen, how many staffs has this guy been on? He's worked with Kirby Smart, he's worked with Nick Saban, he's worked with Jimbo. He's worked with all of them. So I don't think that there's anything he could tell Talia that somehow gets around the corner. And it does remind me of the Jake Fromm, his brother that recruited Auburn. It does remind me of that entire scenario we talked about. I don't think it's approached that point yet, but I can understand why it'd be questions would be asked if it got to that point.
Rick Godby on Facebook says absolutely this is a chance of being a flip. He's going to be behind Hurts and his older brother, who both have a ton of playing time left. He wants to play. Can you imagine here for a moment? Tua going into a sophomore season, Talia is a class of 2019 player. There is, at least if he were to go to another SEC school besides Alabama, there is at least a mathematical chance these two could start a game against each other at some point in time. Now, we've had quarterback brothers before. We've had Eli and Peyton. That's different eras. Not, decades apart, but a few years apart. Not a lot of examples of quarterbacks playing against each other who were siblings, right?
Boy, you want to talk about being mind-boggled. Honestly, and I don't want to see Talia go to Tennessee, but you want to talk about that, and we talked about Ryan Fowler saying it last week about how Tennessee needs to do this to get the rivalry. You want to talk about something getting the rivalry back? Good Lord. Two kids from Hawaii starting at Tennessee and Alabama. That would be something to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, that would really be something to see for sure. A lot of good comments rolling in here for now. Let's go to number 4 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So it's a little late to be adding someone to the 2018 class, but Florida sees a chance to get better here at the end of last week and does that with a junior college tight end who does make it official on Twitter here. Lucas Crowell is his name. He says, I want to thank God for blessing me with this opportunity. Thankful for all my family and friends who were by my side through it all. Fully committed. Officially a Florida Gator. Hashtag all by 18. You thought that hashtag was over and done with, but apparently not. Crowell, who really ranks as one of the top junior college prospects in the entire country, will actually have 3 years of eligibility left. The one knock on him is he hasn't played a lot of football in his career necessarily. This is an interesting prospect for Florida. On the one hand, athletically brings a real special set of skills. On the other hand, for a sort of an unfinished football prospect, you owe him a scholarship now for 3 years.
Yeah.
There's a weird trade-off here.
No, and stop me if I'm mistaken what I read earlier about Lucas Crowell, because I was a little bit dumbfounded to read some of this guy's background. This guy actually went to Arkansas as a pitcher. He got drafted last week, like in the 34th round of the Major League Baseball draft. Ended up, he hasn't played football since 2015, but he's 6'7", 245 pounds. Has all the the tangible things that you want in a tight end prospect, just hasn't played in 3 years. So I was a little bit dumbfounded when I looked at it and I thought, who is this guy and where's he coming from?
Yeah.
And how did this guy end up at a place like Florida playing tight end on the football team? It's crazy to me. But listen, we've heard a ton about Deontay Lewis. We've heard a ton from Larry Scott about the changing in the tight end position down there. When you look at what DeAndre Goolsby was at Florida, really diminishing returns as far as tight ends goes under Jim McElwain. So they signed 2 tight ends during this last recruiting process. This makes 3. I think really when you look at what Dan Mullen's doing offensively, they're trying to turn the tide of the tight end position. So I guess bringing in a ton of bodies, I think this makes 7 or 8 tight ends on the roster as far as Florida goes. Turning that tide, going to the 2 tight end set and doing some things from under center or from the shotgun of Dan Mullen's offense, I think they're going to plan a lot around what the tight end has, and I think Lucas Crowell just bringing another body in is a big deal.
Yeah, body coming in for practice maybe this year. This is not a guy that I assume plays this year unless the 4-game red shirt comes into play here, just given the fact that, he hasn't, played a lot of football. But what people want to see from Dan Mullen is that ability to develop players.
Right,
We've
exactly.
heard that. Hey, he developed players at Mississippi State. Can you develop somebody here at Florida? This is an example of a player that you'd like to see developed, right?
No, for sure. And I think that's what's so interesting. I mean, I think when you look at potential upside, I think you look at, Hayden Hurst. I think you look at somebody like that from South Carolina who has the baseball background, who, but I think there's a lot of downside that could possibly go along with it too. It's hard for me to say win or loss right now for Dan Mullen. I don't think can be taken as a good thing, but I don't know how it can be taken as a great thing either. I mean, for right now, until we see the development, I think it just kind of is what it is down there.
We may be having a little trouble with are you having YouTube issues? I'm having a little YouTube issue.
No, I'm good to go. I'm good to go.
Maybe it's just me then. All right, let's do item number 5 in our SEC Country Live first and 10 list. So Adam Rittenberg is writer for ESPN. He goes on the Paul Feinbaum show recently, and the reason why I bring this up as a topic today is because it's something that you've actually talked about a lot on this show, and it's kind of interesting to see other people now echoing something that you've been calling for a while. It involves a 9-game conference schedule for the SEC. Here's what Adam Rittenberg says about this when he goes on the Feinbaum show. He says, I'm not a fan of the SEC schedule setup, mainly because you don't see each other very often if you're a cross-division opponent. You can go 7, 8 years sometimes without matchups. I just don't think that serves the fans. Florida, I highlighted their schedule. They play all 12 regular season games in 3 states. They have 9 in Florida, 2 in Tennessee against SEC opponents, and then 1 in Mississippi against Mississippi State in the Dan Mullen Reunion Bowl in Starkville. Adam Rittenberg from ESPN on the Feinbaum show goes on to say, I know some SEC fans like the schedule because it creates in their mind an easier path to the college football playoff. If I'm a fan of a team in a league, I want to see teams in that league on a more regular basis in the other division. Florida and Auburn barely play each other anymore. They were great rivals for years and years. I'm a fan of more conference, a book. I'm a fan of more conference games, and I'm a fan of larger rotation so that when you're in a league, it actually feels like that because you're playing all the teams. That's Adam Rittenberg from ESPN on the Feinbaum show. I guess that's partially a criticism of the SEC for only playing the 8-game schedule. I guess it's also a criticism of the rotation, given the fact that there are permanent opponents, and in some cases permanent opponents that have to remain permanent. Therefore, Georgia doesn't play Texas A&M. He mentions Florida playing Auburn. You do have these opponents that Georgia's, that's the schedule that I just know best, has never played Texas A&M and is not scheduled still to play them for a couple more years. And you do go a long time without seeing certain SEC teams. I mean, what do you think about Rittenberg's beef here?
No, I love it. And listen, Rittenberg went on Feinbaum, then Feinbaum went on Jocks, and all of a sudden, it's mid-June, so all the schedule stories start circulating. And Feinbaum brought up the point that obviously, what you're talking about, it's hard to split up the rivalries in the schedule, but he also brought up the point of, listen, Vanderbilt doesn't want this, Kentucky doesn't want this. Most of the schools in the SEC don't want this. Why? Because it's harder to get to bowl eligibility if you're playing 9 conference games. If you're Vanderbilt, do you want to invite another SEC team into your building to have to play to get back to bowl eligibility? Absolutely not. And so I think that's why this is an uphill battle. And Feinbaum pointed out that there's only a couple of coaches that really are on the bandwagon of playing in 9 conference games. But to my point, and you said I've brought this up a ton of times on the show, I loved playing in the swamp. I loved playing between the hedges down in Athens. I loved going to play those away games. Only one stadium I never played in, and that was in South Carolina until they expanded. Now you got teams, you got players at Alabama that are coming and going without even playing Georgia, without even playing Florida, without even playing South Carolina. And so to me, that's tragic. That's tragic to go to the SEC to play football and not see 3 or 4 of the teams, from the East during your career there. I think that stinks.
Bo Molinari says it's weak sauce not playing the 9-game conference schedule, so he sort of agrees with you. And I guess this feels like to me listen, I'd love to see everybody in the SEC play everybody, right? I mean, I'd love to see. I don't like the idea of anybody playing weak opponents. I don't like it when Georgia does. I don't like when anybody else does it. But this just sort of feels like frankly, sort of a carpetbagger type opinion from somebody outside the SEC,
right?
Criticizing what he feels like is a slight on the SEC. When the truth is, the SEC schedules are plenty strong. I mean, if you want to look at all these,
gotta take it as a whole.
Yeah, if you want to look at all these rankings of who plays the toughest non-conference schedules, it's not SEC teams, but it's teams who play SEC teams who are considered to have the toughest non-conference schedules. It's the Miamis, the Georgia Techs, the Clemsons of the world who are thought to have these tough non-conference schedules because they're playing the SEC teams. These are the toughest competitions. So I'm fine with adding the 9th, conference game here, but I'm going to push back against the notion of the SEC is weak because it doesn't play the ninth conference game. I don't think the SEC is out of step with the rest of college football when it comes with scheduling.
No, and honestly, there's only two conferences that don't play the 9 game, and it's the SEC and the ACC, and they're probably the two strongest conferences.
Does the Big Ten play a 9 game
schedule? The Big
schedule?
Ten does play 9 games.
I thought the Pac-12 was the only one who did.
No,
well, that's not true.
I'm under the impression that the Big Ten and Big
because the Big Ten has 10 teams. They play the round robin. So Big Ten. I'm sorry. I meant to say the Big 12. The Big 12 does it because they play. Yeah, they play the round robin. The Pac-12 does it. So the Big Ten does have a 9 game schedule.
Yeah, no, that's what I've been told.
I didn't realize that.
And that's what I think is it. But I was, as far as I know, the SEC and the ACC are the ones that don't play the 9 game conference schedule, and those two are the strongest, from top to bottom, in my opinion, in college football.
So here's what I love. The Facebook video feed, I guess, is working for some people, but not working for me. Apparently, not working for very many people, and yet the feed is still up. So we got people still commenting on the video. Yeah. I guess they're like Morgan Recton said he was going to watch on Facebook and comment on YouTube.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
We'll keep it up and we'll keep going. If y'all want to comment in here, we'll keep talking about it. So we'll read your YouTube comments, but the video itself, if you want to watch that, is over on Facebook. We've actually got some funny video coming up, so you kind of want to get in on that. By the way, speaking of commenters, a moment ago, Bo Molinari, who's a big Texas A&M fan, was critical of us because we're not mentioning the fact that A&M just got a quarterback commit from Zach Calzada, who is a quarterback near high school. This is very near where I used to live, if you want to know the honest truth. I don't live over there anymore, but it's in suburban Atlanta. Calzada is a pretty good-looking quarterback prospect. From my standpoint, I don't know that he's as good as, like, say, Kellen Mond is, who's already on the Texas A&M roster. This is a pretty good pickup for Texas A&M. But this is not Jimbo flexing his muscles. Exactly. With all due respect. Now, I kind of wanted Georgia to get Calzada. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But this is not A&M. When there's a huge recruit for any school, we talk about it. Now, Alabama got one today. We don't have in the rundown. We'll probably talk about that eventually. But when any SEC program gets a huge recruit, we make it up. When we make it a topic on this show, especially in the offseason. Zach Calzada to Texas A&M is not an SEC country like that.
And listen, this is all respect to Bo and Texas A&M and Zach Calzada and all that. That's not something you hang your hat on, in my opinion. I mean, this guy's a good player. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. It's a nice find for Jimbo, but this is not like breaking news like Zach Calzada is headed to Texas A&M. I think that A&M, honestly, in my opinion, and Bo can weigh in on this, A&M has their sights set higher. You know what I mean? Like A&M's the number 2 recruiting class in the country. So, if it's breaking news and we're going to talk about it, it's going to be some of those big guys. And they do deserve to be talked about in terms of recruiting. That guy just isn't one of them.
Perry Williams says, this is huge for Texas A&M. Wasn't he Elite 11 or something? This is no shot at Calzada whatsoever, who is a really good quarterback. This is a very different year for quarterbacks, though. There is no true 5-star in the entire country. You've seen a lot of guys like Calzada be reevaluated by major programs. I think the same thing's true with Ryan Helinski, who's currently a South Carolina commit, recently gotten the USC offer, been offered by Ohio State. There's a lot of reevaluating going on, just given the fact that there is no Justin Fields in this class. There is no Trevor Lawrence in this class. Those kind of quarterbacks just don't exist right now. But A&M continues to add a lot of recruits. But it was a lot of the earlier recruits that I think were the real buzzworthy recruits for the Aggies.
I agree. And I don't want it to sound like I'm taking a shot at Texas A&M. I'm trying to compliment what Jimbo's doing. Yeah. I'm trying to say Jimbo's got bigger fish to fry right now than to us talk about Zach Calzada. This is not some guy that's going to lead your class and that's going to recruit. They've got bigger fish to fry at A&M right now, and there's a lot of other names to focus on.
All right, let's do item number 6 here in our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So we heard from Bobby Bowden on WIAT television in Birmingham a little earlier, weighing in on the quarterback situation in Alabama. He also weighed in on the debate of the all-time great Alabama coach. Is it the former legend Bear Bryant, the current legend Nick Saban? Bowden answered, but I'm not quite sure I know how to decipher what he had to say. Here is Bowden, a legend in his own right, talking about the 2 all-time great Alabama coaches. Take a listen.
Bear was always my idol when I was coming up in coaching, and it'd be hard to top him. It's strictly an opinion. Right now, I would have to say I don't know of anybody better than Nick Saban. Bear might have been about the same. They were 2 different styles completely. I knew both of them very well. It's an opinion.
So he says it's an opinion, but I'm not sure. Did he take Saban or did he take Bryant?
I don't know.
I think he may have taken Bryant there.
I think he might have. And listen, Bobby Bowden might have coached under Bryant, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
I remember a lot of the talk that Bryant would have been the one. I'm sorry, that Bowden could have been the one to come to Alabama when Ray Perkins took that job back in the '80s. He chose to stay at Florida State, and I guess from that standpoint, it probably worked out well at the time. It sort of seems weird to think of a time when you turned down the Alabama job, maybe back following in Bear Bryant's footsteps. That may have been a time when you have considered doing that.
And it's possible. And this goes. Listen, we heard from, was it Terry Bowden? Last week.
We did.
About,
the Bowden's outspoken.
Yeah, coming out, throwing haymakers.
We're gonna get Tommy on the phone now.
It kind of goes along with me with the Jalen versus Tua thing. It's he should have just stuck to his guns and say, well, you can't go wrong either way.
For what it's worth, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. This is kind of a tired subject, but for me, with all due respect to Bear Bryant, who is an all-time great, and I love the history and tradition of the SEC, I just think coaching's harder now. I just think it's harder.
I agree.
Now, if you had some sort of like magical time machine, you could put both guys in the same era. Who out-coaches whom? I don't know that there's any way to know how to figure that out. But in terms of which era is tougher to win in, this SEC now, we talk about conference scheduling earlier, 8-game conference schedule. Should it go to 9? In Bear Bryant's day, it was a 6-game conference schedule. I mean, these guys were cherry picking their opponents half the time. So from that standpoint, with all due respect to Bear Bryant, Saban's the guy here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what do you have? 130 guys on scholarship under Bear Bryant, and it's a completely different landscape. And I think that Nick Saban, in a lot of ways, and you tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm being a Bama homer on this because I played for Nick. He changed the work ethic that comes along with head coaching. He changed the work ethic that comes along with head coaching. I don't know if there was a lot of guys back in the the 70s that wanted to work the way that Nick Saban works. And I think it has changed the landscape for not just Alabama, not just the SEC. I think it's changed the landscape in terms of the entirety of college football.
Along the same lines, Jamie Blanton says LeBron or MJ. I mean, the Saban Bear thing is a little LeBron MJ-esque. That's a good line by Jamie on that.
Point,
By the way, Justin Del Marco weighs in to say coaching isn't harder, but I think recruiting is so much harder. I think that's probably well said by Justin there. It's that aspect of talent acquisition, and Saban's made it harder, but that's what makes this era more difficult.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with recruiting being harder. I mean, listen. If you hear of a guy that's in Alaska, you can flip on the computer and see him. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
But Bear Bryant can sign as many guys as he wants. He could have 400 people. I mean,
but I think that the pool is so much wider, though. I mean, I don't know anything about recruiting in the 70s, but you can hear about it. I mean, there's Huddle, there's Rivals, there's 247. I mean, you can hear about anybody and turn on their film at any given time.
All right, item number 7 on our SEC Country Live, first and 10 list. So obviously a lot of LSU fans are excited about the potential future of Joe Burrow. That's the transfer quarterback from Ohio State, set to arrive at LSU, and I think he's going to eventually become the starting quarterback there. 24/7 Sports caught up with Urban Meyer at a job fair at Ohio State, and he was willing to talk about what he thinks about Joe Burrow. Pretty complimentary here. Let me show you Urban Meyer on Joe Burrow, about his time experience there in Columbus. He says it was good. It was a situation that his last 2 weeks of spring were excellent. I just talked to him the other day and his family. I saw his dad. He's great. He's a Buckeye forever. He's going to do the best he can at LSU. Wish him well, and I understand his decision for leaving. That's Urban Meyer from 24/7 Sports. There is not a lot there. This is very much reading.
I actually think there is.
Okay, so at the risk of reading too much into this, my opinion is, if you're Urban Meyer, you say nothing at all if you don't like the kid. The fact that you throw kind of a bone his way, calling him a Buckeye for life, to me, this sounds like Urban Meyer vouching for Joe Burrow a bit. Not emphatically, but just saying, hey, yeah, Joe Burrow's our guy. If he's a bad dude, I think Urban Meyer's washing his hands with him and saying, listen, he made the decision to leave. We wish him well. But by saying Buckeye for life, that means I want to be thought of in the same circles as Joe Burrow moving forward. If I'm an LSU fan, I sort of take that as a bit of good news.
I saw it completely different than you do. Can we put the graphic back up there with the quote on it? Because I want to point something out to you. This to me, this is Nick Saban talking about Jimbo Fisher as head coach.
Okay.
You remember when we talked about that last week?
Yeah,
He said, boy, Jimbo's one of our guys. He's one of our assistants. He had
that's a great
situation that his last 2 weeks of spring were excellent.
Yeah.
His last 2 weeks of spring were excellent. Is this guy a good player or is he not a good player? It's like, hey, I don't want to get caught up and you guys say that, boy, I can't believe you let Joe Burrows go. His last two weeks of spring were excellent and he'll be a Buckeye for life. Like, that to me was such an underhanded, like, you know what? He had to go somewhere.
All right,
And I don't want to read between the lines, but I think that's what.
It's funny with you saying that because I almost take it to mean something else now that you've said what you said. When he says Buckeye for life, it's almost like Urban Meyer's saying, and if he goes to LSU and does well, we're taking credit for that too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like
look how good our third string quarterback was.
Exactly. That's kind of what I looked into that and saw it completely different. I thought, man, you know what? This guy's talking about he had 2 good weeks. No matter what happens, he's a Buckeye for life. And it's like, I had to get rid of him. I had to let him go. But, we had him for a while.
Well, one thing is for sure, Joe Burrow seems to have a good reputation with Urban Meyer, at least seemingly based on that quote. There's still some folks in Louisiana who are apparently getting acquainted with him because a local Louisiana TV reporter recently asked former LSU running back Leonard Fournette about Joe Burrow. Neither guy seems to have much idea, first of all, who Burrow is or even what his name is. It's a pretty awkward exchange between a reporter and Leonard Fournette. Take a listen to this.
How about the transfer quarterback coming in? How do you think that'll work out?
Which one?
The guy from Ohio State.
It's not the left-handed one, right?
No, not the left-handed one. They got a lot of quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. But like I say, LSU, I think that's the biggest thing they need right now. For all the years, man, as a quarterback. And I think they get that together, man. Can't stop them.
So, in a way, Leonard Fournette actually saves his interview. It's one thing for him not to know who Joe Burrow is. He's playing in the NFL. How does the reporter say, how about that transfer quarterback kid, the one they got from Ohio State? Can you set the guy up a little bit better than that?
Yeah, like what are you, a TMZ reporter? Like,
not the left-handed one?
You're digging in on something that you should have more of a knowledge base about.
Here's my prediction. Pretty soon, Leonard Fournette and everybody in Louisiana is going to know full well who Joe Burrow's name is.
I agree. No, it's like I didn't want to build it up to be too much when this guy, but I was all in on this guy going to Florida, and I was all in him going to LSU. I think it's a big deal.
Stephen Early says that was the nicest way for Leonard Fournette to say the quarterback situation's a hot mess.
Yeah.
That may be it. Leonard Fournette would certainly know that better than anybody else. All right, item number 8 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list, and this is pretty fascinating video because we see guys run out on the field all the time. We'll do that again as a part of our Champion of Life here in a couple of minutes. But we almost never see it from the perspective of the person who does run out on the field. Because honestly, I've always wondered, what would propel you to want to do this? And what's the scene like right before you make the decision to go on the field? Well, one Arkansas fan, or at least the friends of this Arkansas fan, in the outfield bleachers in Omaha at the College World Series gives us an idea of the moment before the moment when you go running on the field.
Right.
This is one of the better videos we've played in a while. So if you're listening on YouTube right now, hop over to Facebook so you can see this. This is very funny from the perspective of an Arkansas fan who violates the law by jumping on the field in the College World Series. Watch this. Here it comes. Now, what I love about this guy's friends, I'm assuming these are friends. I mean, we're going to assume the guy with the phone, that's his friend, right? He's cheering for him when he goes on the field. Then he's still cheering for him after he gets knocked down there. Like what is anybody getting out of this?
You tell me, do they sell beer in Omaha?
I don't know. What do y'all think?
You think they sell
beer
beer
at the
in
College
Omaha?
World Series? What do we think?
I would think they do. That's something. There was liquid courage in there. I don't know if it happened at a tailgate or if it happened at a stadium.
I'm saying no beer at the College World Series.
I'd be interested. Anybody out there, anybody watching, has been to the College World Series. I'd be interested to know
because
that.
neither of our two schools have been there quite a while. So I'm assuming no beer at the College World Series, but he's clearly, I'm going to allege here, he's drunk. But what does anybody get out of this?
No, I don't know. It's like this so far beyond me because I've seen this a bunch. This happened. I've probably seen 5 or 6 of them happen when I was actually playing. I've been to a lot of sporting events where people do this. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's like, hey, I'm going to get 6 seconds of exposure here in the outfield. Nobody's going to see it except cell phone video, and I'm going to look cool.
Greg Steele, who would know because he's a Florida fan, says, yes, they do sell beer at the College World Series. James Perkins notices the security officer who says, give that guy a scholarship. Esteban Estevez says the same thing. Arkansas needs to recruit that guy to play defense because their defense is trash. Justin Del Marco said that dude got hit harder than Aaron Murray in the 2012 SEC Championship. That's still kind of an unpleasant memory for a lot of us there. Imlu Castillo Arcuri, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, and I apologize if I didn't, says, been there twice, not sure, but I don't think so, which would have been more along the lines of what I was thinking there. But anyway, I mean, that's a pretty cool video to see, like, the moment before you jump on the field.
Yeah, I do wonder, too, are those kids actually his friends, or did he walk down the stairs and was like, I'm going for this, and everybody's like, get your phone out.
Yeah.
Get your phone out, and he jumps the fence. I don't
That
get
was
it, man.
literally a hold my beer moment.
No, it was. Yeah, it was like, hey, I'm going.
That's
It's
where
not
that
like he
meme
ran
came-
from him. He
Yeah.
didn't run from anybody. He just kind of was like, oh, I'm going to go out here.
That's where that meme came from, moments like that. Perry Williams says on Facebook, I dated a girl from Arkansas. They're all nuts, but huge fans and fun to watch sports with. Take being floor mats like champs. That's Perry Williams with one of those moments where if you're an Arkansas person, Arkansan, you have to say, thank you?
Yeah.
Is that a compliment?
Morgan Regden brings up a good point, too, in the YouTube comment section. I said, why would you ever do that? And she says, they get to be on SEC Country Live. So, and Travis not only says it's legendary, I'd buy him a beer. I don't know why it's legendary. Really.
Jamie Blanton says, this guy's an idiot. Those tickets weren't cheap either. That was a look at me try. You better run across that field. Here's the other thing, too. This counts as an arrest, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, this is not like a, order to appear in court. Hey, it's a citation.
No,
pay a fine. This is an arrest. This is
Yeah.
like the kind of thing you have to put on, I hate to sound like your dad, on the day after Father's Day, but you have to put this on every job application you ever fill out for the rest of your life. And my guess is this person's going to be filling out a lot of job applications.
No, yeah, it's not something that's going to go away. It's not something like, I'm a juvenile. No, this sticks. And I don't know the exact charge that goes against that. I mean, trespassing or whatever.
Corey Tester says, if I go down on the field, they're going to have to chase me. I'm not taking the hit without a fight. That's Corey Tester on that one. Neyland Stadium security be looking out because he's a big Tennessee fan. All right, let me do item number 9 on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list for a moment. I had somebody send this to me on Twitter, and I didn't catch this at first glance. I saw this quote, but I didn't put one and one together here. But so a Dallas Cowboys reporter quotes Cole Beasley, the Cowboys wide receiver. Let me just do all this again. It is a Cowboys reporter talking to a Dallas receiver about the new Cowboys wide receivers coach. Let me show you what the quote here is from Cole Beasley on this one. Talking about, here we go. Cole Beasley, a big fan of new Cowboys wide receiver coach Sanjay Law. The quote here, it feels like the first time we're actually being taught how to run routes instead of just sort of naturally doing. The old Cowboys receivers coach is the new Missouri offensive coordinator, Derek Dooley. Is Cole Beasley taking a shot at Derek Dooley?
I think Cole Beasley's taking a shot at Derek Dooley, no doubt.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, here's what I will say. I don't think this is all bad news for Missouri fans.
Okay.
I think as being your offensive coordinator, it's completely because I've had coaches. You have two different kinds of coaches when you talk about. There's guys that know the details about what you need to do at a certain position. Like if you have an offensive line coach that knows the footwork, knows the hand placement, knows the head placement. There's guys that know that. There's also schematic coaches, right? There's coaches that say, hey, you know what? We need to slide the protection to the left, to pick up the Will Mike blitz coming off the left side and watch that safety. It's all those things. Hey, you guys block them. This is what's going to happen. There's two different kinds of coaches. To me, what I heard Cole Beasley saying is, this is a schematic guy. He wasn't teaching us how to run routes. He wasn't teaching us about footwork. He wasn't teaching us where to cut things off or what to do with our head. He was saying, hey, you go out there and run an in route. This guy runs, a fly and all these different things. I don't think this is bad news for Missouri fans. I think that you look at it and say Cole Beasley's taking a shot at Derek Dooley, but Derek Dooley's not a wide receiver coach anymore.
If you get to the NFL, shouldn't you already know how to run routes?
It's difficult. It's difficult.
I know it's not easy.
I agree with
I'd
you.
be doing it.
I agree with you, but you need that reminder. If you're a 10th year guy in the NFL and nobody for the last 10 years has said, hey, listen, your left foot's in the wrong spot or your head's going the wrong direction or you should get an extra yard on this route to make sure the timing's good, you can't coach yourself. It's self-coaching is very, very hard to do. So, yes, he knows how to run the routes, but picking up the small details is what the coach is there for.
My issue with Derek Dooley in Missouri, and this is Kenneth Claw gave us the snore sign because we're talking about Missouri, but some of y'all got to play Drew Lock. And if he's got a good offensive coordinator, that's a tough out for a lot of SEC teams. Even if you don't like Missouri, that's true. But my issue with Derek Dooley is if you were a good play caller, you would have already been calling plays somewhere. Because that is the most sought-after job, arguably among the most sought-after jobs in sports. Anybody who can call plays is calling plays. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's like I said, I don't know what Derek Dooley's going to be on his OC. I don't look at what Cole Beasley said to mean he's not going to be a good offense coordinator at all. I just think that, listen, he wasn't that great as a wide receiver coach. Wasn't in on the details. It was time for him to move on and do something else, and now he is.
All right, if you like the video of the Arkansas fan getting rocked by the security personnel the College World Series. Wait till you see our champion of life coming up here in just a moment. This is one of the better pieces of video we've shown for that segment in quite some time. Boy, it really is. Is the air conditioner just not working?
Air conditioner's broke? Oh, that makes sense. Good Lord, it's hot in here, man.
That is not good times. Anyway, item number 10 on our SEC Country Live, before we get to the very funny champion of life here, involves Alabama extending an offer to an 8th grader here. But wait till you see the 8th grader. This is kind of put out there on Twitter from Keonta Goodwin. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He says, thankful to receive an offer from the University of Alabama. And he throws some tags in there, some at mentions on Twitter. Look at Keonta Goodwin standing next to Nick Saban. This is an 8th grader? My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, top of Nick's head's not even up to his trap. I mean, it is one of those things where he's staring him right in the chest. And
Class of 2022, by the way.
Class of I mean, good Lord, I felt old when I saw that a minute ago. And by the way, according to 247, this guy's got offers from FSU, LSU, and Georgia.
Yeah.
Also, already on the radar.
I mean, listen, there was a time when I would have totally mocked the notion of offering an 8th grader, because when I was growing up, the best 8th grade athletes weren't even playing varsity sports. But when you look like that and you've already got 4 offers, what are you waiting on?
Yeah.
No, this is one of those things I have completely evolved on over time, because I used to be one of the ones that were mocking these kind of offers. But now you don't want to be the 10th offer in. If you're the 10th offer in, a lot of these guys, you can't get back in the door on them.
Right. And it's who said that a second ago? Zach Smith said that 8th grader makes Saban look like an 8th grader.
That's funny.
And I agree with you. I mean, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, because, listen, when I was in 8th grade, I was like 170. You know, it's like I'm trying to wrap my mind around how physically gifted this kid is, and I'm like, why is everybody offering him a scholarship? Who knows? And who knows what he's going to be an athlete, much less a student by the time he's a senior. But you're right, you can't be late on these guys anymore.
Robbie Sizemore says it's not okay if you already have an offer, especially from Alabama. Why do you have to play to your full potential for the next 4 years? If you think Alabama's holding themselves to this promise, though, I mean, that's the like that old country song that says, if the phone doesn't ring, you know it's me. Yeah. When the phone stops ringing, you know it's Alabama that's not calling anymore. If all of a sudden some of that weight gets displaced a bit here and there. So, I mean, we all know he can't commit to Alabama. Right. It's like, I mean, that's what I love to do. It's like, all right, coach, thanks for the offer, I commit. And he says, no, let's hold on.
Hang on
so you've still got a lot of proof to put in the pudding here, a lot of work to do, but this is Alabama just simply saying, we acknowledge the work that you've been putting in thus far, and we acknowledge what God gave you.
Right, yeah, I mean, this is us saying, this is Bama saying, hey, we don't want to be last. You know, we don't want to be last here. We want to make sure we're on the radar as soon as we can be.
Larry Goldberg, in reference to the size of stature of Nick Saban in that same picture, says, so the kid's taller than 4 feet, big deal. I mean, if you're Nick Saban, is this a picture you really ought to be taking?
Yeah, I mean,
come on. Like, now I understand that cheesing with the recruits is like the head coach deal here, but this is not doing Saban any favors.
No, yeah, I've got a couple pictures with Coach Saban like this, and I'm not as tall as this kid, but I'm not that far off, and it is fun. It's funny to look at. Everybody always notices that too, and I think his hair has gotten even taller since I left school.
No doubt. Yeah, you're getting a little help there. All right. Anyway, we like to close the show the same way every day. We're always on the lookout for champions of life, and today, I guess we're kind of keeping with the theme of guys running on the field and then having some untimely consequences for doing that. We saw a security guard bring down a fan at the College World Series a few moments ago. But how about in a Canadian Football League game over the weekend, a fan get taken down by one of the players? I think many of you have always wanted to see this happen. Now you get a chance to. This is the Canadian Football League. The guy there, kind of middle of your screen, is the fan running around here. I have no idea where security is. Canada apparently a little bit more lax than we're here in America. Watch number 8, though. Check this out. Boom. Kaboom.
Oh, man, that hurt.
First of all, this is the laziest security guard in North America. Yeah. Like, this guy waited until 8 had drilled him to come over there and subdue him.
Yeah.
How much did that hurt?
No, that one hurt.
No pads against a fully padded professional football player who, by the way, goes above the shoulder.
Yeah.
Can you not give me a...
He was targeting. He was targeting.
Give me a targeting call. Can you not at least go
It looks like his helmet
hit
hit this guy like right in the eyebrow. Like, watch this. Like, boom.
I mean, seriously.
Oh, my God, that hurt.
How much does that hurt?
That hurt.
That's
really,
a hospital
really hurt.
trip, right?
I've dropped a helmet on my face before, like trying to hang it up and dropped it, and like thought I was KO'd.
And
can't even imagine.
If you don't think this is going to be on like every First Take and like Skip Bayless show, they're going to bring criminal charges against this player.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, I think so.
I don't know. It reminds me of the Randall Simon.
I'm not saying he gets
Milwaukee's Brewer mascot and like with the baseball.
I'm not saying he gets convicted because I don't know the court system in Canada. But you can't just wallop somebody.
Yeah. No, it's happened before. I mean, the Ohio State strength coach did this like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And like suplex guy. You got to be careful these days.
It's at
right?
least a civil situation. I'm not sure what Canadian Football League players make, but that's probably a different conversation for a different day. Nonetheless, for now, though, thanks for being with us on our program today. If you missed a portion of the broadcast, if you're on YouTube, had some issues, check out the podcast. That's a great way to keep up with everything going on at SEC Country Live. Just simply look for SEC Country Live wherever you find podcasts, and let us know if you can find it. We'll make sure we get it there for you. Also, share the show with your friends on Facebook and on YouTube, because normally it works there too. Let folks know that we're talking about the SEC here each and every afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of SEC Country Live. You have a great day.